Padachaya Shodohe Amaya Tumar Charana Dori Jaya Vidadumi Jaya Dosha Shodhi Jaya Puno Devodasi Jaya Satsangha Deho He Mare Ose Ji Sange Rahashe Ekagira Mara Nagi Paya Para Hari Nama Sankirtani Tumi Kripa Puri Shraddha Bindu Diya Devo Krishna Namadhani Krishna se tumhara Krishna dite palo Tumhara shakti Amito Ganga Krishna Krishna Bole Aita Pache Pache Amito Ganga Krishna Krishna Bole Aita Pache Pache Vaishnava His Grace, Janakinath,
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Bhai. For those of you who haven't offered flowers, if you'd like to just take this last opportunity to come and offer flowers to Janakinath Prabhu. While that's going on, we'd like to warmly welcome Janakinath Prabhu's family. We have Harish Bhai, and Bharti Ben, and family, Ushma, Nimal, and the cousin sisters. And there's some other families, so we welcome you all. If you can do anything to serve you, if you need water or anything, please let one of us know. Hare Krishna. Janakinath Prabhu, or as the family know, Jigar, came to our Pandita Center 15 years ago, approximately. And since then, he's smiled at all of us, made us smile. And the reflection I was having today, I was at work, I'm a dentist, and I have a lot of people coming to me and say, can you make my smile better? And there's many textbooks we read about how to design a smile. But there's one thing the textbooks don't know, the professors don't know, is what's underneath that smile. And it's a heart of gold. And you can't pay any amount of money. You can't pay any amount of money to get a smile like Janakinath Jigar. And now with his passing, after a 4-year battle or adventure, he called it, with cancer, for most of us, what we remember is that smile and how much he made us smile. I'm sure today we'll have many memories from the Pandita Center devotees who have known you for the past 15 years or so in different formats. So without further ado, I'd like to invite his partner in crime and one of his closest friends, Ghanshyam Priya Prabhu, who is currently in LA, and he'll be joining in through Zoom. If I could just a couple of house rules, we're not expecting any fire alarms. If it does, then we'll congregate towards the back and go outside from the door over there. If I can ask you all kindly to turn your mobile phones off or at least on silent. If you need, it's very hot weather, so if you need hydration, let one of us know on the sides, otherwise there's water there. And the toilets are just at the back there, in the back left corner. For those of you watching online from the manor and around the world, we know that Janakinath Prabhu was loved. And today you'll get a glimpse of his years with us in Pandita Center. Even while he joined the ashram, he still wanted to come back home to PS. So we thank you for joining us as well. So we can turn this screen. Will the online be able to see that? Okay, perfect. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'm very grateful and honored to have this opportunity to speak in honor of my dear, dear friend and brother, Janakinath Prabhu. I have so many things that I want to share with you all today. And before this, I was collating some memories and some thoughts over the years that we've spent together. We'd both known each other now for around 16 years. And so we had many wonderful memories during that time that I'd love to share with you. So for me, Janakinath Prabhu he was definitely the smiling monk. He was definitely the positive soul, but he was also the person that shared everything with me and I shared everything with him. We shared every anxiety, every stress, every worry, every pressure, every story, every challenge in Krishna consciousness, every pitfall, all of those things were things that we shared with each other. And so for me, Janakinath Prabhu was not only the smiling saint and the wonderful devotee, but he was also a dear, dear, intimate friend who would share many intimate memories and thoughts with. My first memory with him goes back to being at the Chowpatty temple. It was around 2010. And we were both sitting in the Brahmachari Ashram in Chowpatty, and we were masterminding what we would do when we were in the ashram together. He'd just been on the Brahmachari training program there, and all the devotees were in awe of him, from Gauranga Prabhu, who initially didn't have high hopes for him at the Brahmachari training program, all the way through to the new devotees. They were just all in awe of him. He'd become their favorite person out of the whole Brahmachari training program. And we were sitting there coming up with plans of what we were both going to do when we were in the ashram together. And I remember we devised this plan. And one thing about Janakinath Prabhu was that he always believed deeply in blessings. And so he said to me, he said, we should go and share this plan. We should go and present this plan to Vrajvihari Prabhu and Gaur Gopal Prabhu. And a part of me was hesitant because I was like, well, what if we share it with them and they don't like it? I don't want to hear their feedback. And he was like, no, we must go and get their blessings. We must go and get their good wishes because they've been so instrumental in developing the Brahmachari Ashram in Chowpatty. So I agreed with him. And this is often how we'd make decisions, where we'd debate and discuss, and then he'd usually win because he'd usually be right. And we went to show it to them. And they both were very kind and gracious, as they always are to all of us. And then they said, well, we really think you need to go and get the blessings of the devotees at the manor because you're trying to do something over there. So we really think that you don't need our blessings, you need their blessings. And so when we both came back to London, we presented those ideas at the Brahmachari Ashram in London. And you'll find a trend that continues on in this. But initially, those plans were put aside, and me and Janakinath Prabhu had to start developing our rebellious field. So our rebellious nature began when we both would miss a fair few Mangalartis together. And this was one of my favorite things to do in the morning, where we'd both wake up and we'd roll over. I knew which corner of the room he slept in, and he knew which corner I slept in. And we'd roll over probably at about 4:35 a.m. And he'd see me still sleeping and I'd see him still sleeping, and we'd roll over and go back to bed again until one of the brahmacharis would come and wake us up at around 5 a.m. or 5:15 or whenever it was to try and get us to japa. But we always made sure we were either going together or we weren't going to go, or we were going too late. And it was such a wonderful brotherhood of, just complete trust and faith in each other's rebelliousness and attempts at devotion. One of the most wonderful things that Janakinath Prabhu had as a quality was his desire to see everyone get along. He never wanted devotees to have conflict. He never wanted devotees to have arguments or debates, or he never wanted devotees to have ill feelings towards each other. And I think this is such a special quality that Janakinath Prabhu held so deeply throughout his spiritual life. And so sometimes me and some of the other devotees may have had some disagreements in regards to preaching or ideas or different thoughts that we had. And Janakinath Prabhu would be this expert mediator where he would come and talk to me and he'd find what I was struggling with about the situation. And then behind my back, he would go and speak to the other devotees, usually Ananda Chaitanya Prabhu. And he'd go to Ananda Chaitanya Prabhu and then he'd find out what Ananda Chaitanya Prabhu was really worried about and was really going on. And then he'd tell both of us that both of us wanted to talk to each other and we wanted to figure it out and that we just wanted to be friends. And then when me and Ananda Chaitanya Prabhu would come together, we'd just be like happy and gracious and grateful with each other, not realizing that actually Janakinath Prabhu was the mastermind behind the glue that he was creating. And he never wanted the credit. He never tried to be the person who was known for bringing the ashram together. He never tried to be the person who was seen as the glue. He truly was just like glue. He just got everyone to stick together. You'd never see him. You'd never know that he existed. But he was constantly trying to figure out smart ways for the devotees to always be together and always be connected and never have any animosity amongst each other. I remember when we planned the Uncommon Sense retreats. So these were the boys' retreats that we both started from the ashram. Abhishek Prabhu, who's watching today, was instrumental in organizing some of those original retreats and events. Sadhguru Chaitanya Prabhu as well was very instrumental in organizing those early gatherings. And Janakinath Prabhu and I were dedicated to want to connect with all of the young men in Pandavasena and see what community we could bring about. And we started planning these retreats where we would go to these Christian retreat centers, a place called Rock UK. And for those of the boys who came along with those retreats, you'll remember them well. There would be about 20 young boys. Myself and Janakinath Prabhu would lead the retreats. And once Janakinath Prabhu, he was always very, he always wanted to do the craziest thing or the hardest thing that we could do together as a group so we could create bonds. And for those of you that will remember, he made us climb this mountain called the Penny Fan Mountain, I believe it was called. It was freezing that day. None of us were equipped. And it also turned out to be the tiniest mountain, although he'd made it sound like it was going to be this big feat that we were going to climb. And Janakinath Prabhu just had this extreme zeal and enthusiasm where he just wanted he wanted everyone to be excited and enthusiastic as he was all the time. And even though that trip turned out to be somewhat of a failure, he was still smiling and pushing people up to climb this mountain and climb up this rock and be excited and enthusiastic about it. I remember when we first started the first men's base, we took this idea from Chowpatty where young men would live together while they were at university and they would support each other and they would go off to university together, but then they'd come back, have prasad together, have Krishna consciousness discussions. And we were looking around. So Janakinath Prabhu I went into this real estate agent in London. It's called Foxtons. They're pretty popular, and I'm sure you've seen a Foxtons. And we didn't know how to tell them we were monks and needed to rent an apartment for young men to live in. And we were like, this sounds very complicated. So Janakinath Prabhu pretended to be a young and upcoming startup founder. And he used his charm and magician-like abilities to make friends with the real estate agent. We were fortunate that Ras Bihari Krishna Prabhu had offered to be our guarantors. Initially, I think we'd come up with a fake name as a guarantor so that we'd be able to get this building. And we were going around in all these meetings at all these offices, and Janakinath Prabhu would just charm away and everyone would become friends with him. They'd all want to do us favors and support us. And he just had this way of engaging everyone in Krishna consciousness without them even knowing it. And I think that was such a beautiful quality he had. For anyone that he preached to, never felt preached to. Anyone that he shared Krishna consciousness with never felt like they were being preached to. He was able to do it in the most magical and effortless ways where people were just drawn to his electricity and his amazing love for them and compassion for them. One particular adventure, we used to drive to Cambridge every single week to do an event at Cambridge University. And neither Janakinath Prabhu or I went to Cambridge University, but we thought it was a great place to share Krishna consciousness. So we would travel up there every week. And it would also give us an excuse to miss Mangalarti. So it kind of allowed us to have another flavor. And on one of the trips, he was driving, and Janakinath Prabhu, for anyone who's been in a car with Janakinath Prabhu, he liked to drive fast. He liked cars and he liked to drive fast. And once we got pulled over by the police, and so we're driving fast on this road to Cambridge, the police pull us over, and Janakinath Prabhu and I are feeling fairly relaxed, but he's now starting to panic. And he's like, what are we going to say? What are we doing? You know, we've got to get to a program. And Janakinath Prabhu was worrying about getting to a program when we've been pulled over by the police. Anyway, the police come around and they say, hey, could we have your driving license and, you know, insurance and all of that kind of stuff. And Janakinath was trying to make friends with a very abrasive policeman. So the policeman he just wants to be serious. He's like, can we please have your driving license? And Janakinath was like, good day, officer. How are you doing? Like, he's trying to start a conversation. And I'm like, JD, like, chill out. This person doesn't, you know, let's just be serious. And then JD goes, oh, officer, would you like a cake? And he takes a cupcake. We had the back of the car was full of cupcakes, which was obviously to distribute as prasad. And he said to the police officer, he was like, would you like to have a cupcake? And the police officer's alarm bells went off. And he said, what's in that cupcake? And Janakinath Prabhu was like, oh no, you know, it's just, we make it and we milk the cows ourselves. And you know, he's like explaining how he made this cupcake. And the police officers just not finding it funny or entertaining at all. I then hear them talking, and this was really, I mean, it was totally random, but I heard one of them say cannabis. They thought they were cannabis cakes. And they thought that we were both high because of how positive Janakinath Prabhu was. He was like just beaming and radiating. And they were like, these two guys must be high. And I'm like, JD, they think they're made of weed. Like they think that those cakes have cannabis and weed in them. And JD is like, that's crazy. Why would they think that? I was like, JD, because you're literally acting like a crazy man. You just, you know, you've got so much energy. They think you must be high. And then JD starts saying, oh, no. He goes, no. He goes, I'm not high. We're monks. We're always happy. We're always happy. And I was like, JD, we don't look like monks either. We're dressed in like normal clothes to, you know, go and share Krishna consciousness at Cambridge University. But somehow JD managed to convince them that we were really monks and that was the reason we were happy. And then he also introduced them to the Mahamantra as well. So it was such an amazing memory and story that I'll never forget, and an amazing interaction where policemen thought Janakinath Prabhu was high. That's how ecstatic he is in energy at all times. I have a few more things to share. Please let me know when I've got only a little bit of time left. I think I have to wrap up. I will end with one last thing. This was literally 3 days ago. I got a message from Sutta Prabhu, maybe about 5 days ago now. I got a message from Sutta Prabhu at about 3:40 p.m. LA time, which was about 11:40 p.m. in the UK. And he said, oh, Janakinath Prabhu and I were just talking about you. And so I called him straight away. And I got to speak to Janakinath Prabhu, which was the last time I ever got to speak to him. And I have to be honest and say that he was the same. He was smiling, he was beaming. He was laughing and joking around with me. We shared many of the memories I've shared with you today. He was giving me instructions. And the biggest instruction that I'd like to share with you all that he shared with me was that he said, don't ever tell Krishna what you don't want. He said, don't ever share with Krishna what you don't want. He said, you may pray for what you do want, but he goes, don't pray for what you don't want, because Krishna may use that in your detachment. He said, this is what I want to share with you today. So I want to pass that on today. I have many more stories to tell. I hope I'll get to tell them to you all in the future. But my memories of Janakinath Prabhu are full of joy, full of laughter, and full of ecstatic moments. So I hope that I've been able to share that energy that he always had with all of you. And I miss him deeply, and I send him lots of love, and love to his family, love to everyone who's on this call, and love to everyone who knew him deeply, and love to everyone who really took care of him in his final months and final years. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Referred to Janakinath as glue. You don't see it. You don't see it in any of the fixtures or fittings there. But without it, everything would crumble. And Janakinath was that glue that kept the communities that he got involved in, both outside of the temple, inside the temple, and Planet Center, and in the family. So we can reflect on that. Now we'll have Chitti Shakti. If you come up, Chitti Shakti, Janakinath Prabhu wanted to go to Sanghas, and he was very eager to learn about Krishna consciousness. So he joined Chitti Shakti's Sangha, which was an interesting choice at the time. He got a bit of stick for it, but he learned a lot of good stuff from her. So we're here from her time sharing Krishna consciousness with him. Ask you to put this on as well.
Om Gyantavinandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I'm so glad Ghanshyam went first, because he made me smile and took me out of my tears. So actually, he's right. Even my memories of Janakinath are full of joy, as I'm sure many of yours are. So Janakinath, he joined Krishna Consciousness through King's College Krishna Consciousness Society back in 2005. It was autumn 2005. And I remember it clearly because it was just a few months after Bhaktivedanta Maharaj had left, and we had a very unique group that year. You know, it was a time in KC Socks where we were giving Krishna consciousness as it is, in a palatable way, but as it is. So it was rather like the quietest store in the shopping center. Which is the quietest store in the shopping center? It's the one that sells the most valuable goods. Right? There's no price tag. People don't recognize the value of things there. And even those who do and can afford it, even when they see what's there, they don't necessarily part with what they have, even if they have an abundance of it. So he joined at a time when there was no beating around the bush. It was, take it or leave it. It presented in that way. But when he joined, he was, he came in bopping, quite literally. That was one of Janakinath's, even Satchidananda Maharaj spoke about it yesterday, that when he walked in, it was like he was dancing to some rhythm. And he was quite literally, he had his headphones on, and, he loved hip hop music and reggae at the time. And he was smiling, he was friendly, he was unassuming. But one thing to point out about Janakinath, that even though he joked, even though he smiled and he was so friendly, he was not frivolous. He was actually very, very serious. And it was obvious from the beginning, because with that smile, with that joy, he was always very diligent. He was always really attentive. He had this little notebook that he would keep in the sessions, and he had the tiniest writing, but he got everything down. He asked the best questions, so he'd get the best answers. And that wasn't just my experience. I think anybody who ever spoke to him knew that he drew out the best from everyone. When somebody is fully there, and fully there with all their heart, all their mind, all their soul, you just spontaneously give everything and more than what you have, because you can't hold back. You don't feel like holding back. It doesn't matter whatever stuff you have of your own, it just gets pushed aside. So I remember one memory of Janakinath, because, you know, he really did develop a higher taste very quickly. The process wasn't an austerity for him. And the first time I noticed it was, you know, yeah, he was practicing, he was chanting, etc. But the first time I noticed that things really were shifting for him was he walked into one talk bopping again, and he had headphones on and he had his hoodie up. But this time there was an extra bounce to his dance. And I thought, I really want to know what he's listening to. I've not seen him dance like this before. And so I said, you know, Jigar, what are you listening to? And he said, oh, yeah. And he started singing. He said, Lord Chaitanya's moon is was he listened, and he gave me his headphone. And he put him, this is amazing, this album. And he started telling me about the devotees in Africa who'd recorded it and how there's reggae, Mahamantra, and he was so surprised. And he loved it. And I just thought, oh, he really is developing a higher taste. Everything he has a taste for is becoming Krishnaized, you know? And he kept that. But, you know, he was just extraordinary in his ordinariness. And I mean that as the highest compliment. I mean that as the highest compliment, because the journey that Janakinath took, the unique qualities he brought with him, and particularly that, you know, with that smile, with that joy, with that attitude of wanting everybody to get on and be happy, he was always very careful and measured and balanced in his approach. I saw that from day one right up until the end with every decision. For example, when he decided to do his sabbatical, wanted to travel to India with his family, he was measured. He knew what he was doing and wanted to do and wanted to stay on in India for more brahmachari training. Maybe didn't agree with his family at the time, but he also knew how much he loved him. And he knew that if you took that decision, your love would allow you to forgive him and not reject him. So he was careful and he was measured. He was careful and measured with how he chose his spiritual master. He wanted a spiritual master that he could have a lot of personal service for. And so all of his questions were to get to the essence, to get to the truth. Even joining brahmachari ashram, I think with Janakinath, because he was developing this higher taste so quickly, clearly picking up from previously, it was very evident that although he was always happy and smiling and measured and serious, he was going to be like that no matter what his situation, because he had real detachment, because he had attachment for the process and for Krishna, and actually for saintly personalities and devotees. He loved devotees. And when he joined brahmachari ashram, it was one of the things that was really evident, even when he was a new devotee, was that actually he would do well in any ashram. He would be happy. He would become Krishna conscious. And anyway, just so that I don't go over my time, the brahmachari side of all I want to say about that is actually, I would say I never saw Janakinath in saffron or white. I saw him in a technicolor, rainbow colored outfit always. You know, he fits in everywhere. And he lived up to his name, Jigar, dear to everybody, you know, as dear as your life. And, you know, my only worry after he decided to commit to brahmachari ashram was, will he still keep in touch? You know, and because, you know, my experience was very similar to how Sachinanda Maharaj and Chandramauli Maharaj, both very, very, you know, serious, amazing souls, as you know, had that you can't help but feel like he's your friend, even if he's the one coming to you for advice. And he kept in touch, not just through the sanghas, but phone calls, video calls. He would pop in. You know, he came when Anyura was born. He was there like a little uncle for her, you know, making jokes, showing her magic tricks. But one thing that was really, really clear is his questions were also about the right questions at the right time in his life. And when he was always really inspired by Bhakti Maharaj, always. And when he was diagnosed with the cancer, he didn't take anything for granted. And his questions were always around, what mood did Maharaj have in his relationship with the cancer? And, you know, this mood of adventure, he you know, really imbibed that from Bhakti Maharaj. Actually, he reminded me a lot of him and still reminds me a lot of him. And this went right the way through, right up until, and we would plan projects and things like that, and what we're going to do in the future, this combination of a monk and a shrink. And then our last conversation was a few days before he moved into the manor. And I could tell it could possibly be our last conversation. In fact, I spoke to him as if it may be our last conversation. Not because he was so sick when I spoke to him, but because his question was very different. Because at that time, the question he asked, and that actually was the perfect question. His question was, although I'm going there to make one last try with Ayurveda and the doctors can't do anything, he said, actually, what's most important to me is how do I surrender everything so that I can fully experience my relationship with Krishna, not indirectly, not through other things, but actually know who I am. And so that last conversation with him was full of joy and also full of sadness. Sadness, a selfish sadness, because I think we have lost someone who became so dear to all of us, but ultimately became so dear to Krishna that Krishna had to take him back. And Krishna just couldn't stay away from him any longer. So, so that I think I've already gone over time. So thank you so much for your time, Hare Krishna, and thank you to Janakinath's family. You know, to give your son to us like that, we are eternally indebted. Krishna.
Just being informed that we have His Holiness Sachidananda Swami and Gopal over there on the Zoom call. So if we could warmly welcome him with a loud Hari Bol. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Thank you, Maharaj, for greeting us. You are the ambassador and you are the godfather of Pandavasena. So thank you for always being there and for all that you've done for Janakinath Prabhu in his preparation for his final test. Hare Krishna. So now we'll invite Nanda Gopal Prabhu, and then we'll have the three cousin sisters of Janakinath come forward, and then we'll have a video and then some more offerings.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I wrote something down just so that I don't fall apart when I do this. I'm going to keep it light because that is JD. So I've known JD since he first joined PS in 2005. We did jammings together. We planned Janmashmis together. We went on Sena getaways together. We did mentorship trips together. He was the life of the party. He brought energy, humor, charisma, but most importantly, he brought fun wherever he went. There are many varieties of devotees in our beautiful ISKCON community. Some are very advanced and internally blissed out, but externally very sober. In all honesty, that's not a rasa I can relate to very well. And so when I met JD, my heart felt satisfied. I finally met someone I could really vibe with. He was full of banter, but it was of the sweetest kind. When boys get together and banter, it can very quickly degenerate into offensive prajalpa. But when JD did it, everyone felt joyful. That was no doubt because there was truly no envy in his heart. Even his banter was an attempt to serve others. Everything was an adventure with him. I remember once he invited me up to the ashram to discuss our latest preaching project. And he said, "Hey, Nanda, shall I show you my secret hangout?" So I looked around and I just saw lockers everywhere. I'm thinking, where's this going to go? And then with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "Come, let's go quick before I get caught and get told off." And so even though we were grown men at the time, like little boys, we carefully climbed out through this tiny window in the Brahmachari ashram and made our way to the top of the manor roof. I felt a little bit of anxiety because clearly this was something I wasn't meant to be doing. He said to me, "It's okay, Nanda. We're high. That means we're closer to Krishna." Although I've known JD for a really long time, most of my association with him was just in the last 4 years. As all of you know, he saw getting cancer as a gift and an opportunity to preach. He had a strong desire to help the cancer community, people with cancer, but also the family and friends of those people affected by cancer. He was smart. He figured out that meant basically helping everyone. The idea of a cancer charity called Smiling Soul was born. Inspired by the smiling monk himself, our aim was to help people holistically, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and of course, spiritually. We knew that if we can share practical wisdom based on the mode of goodness, it will create a platform for people to connect to bhakti. JD was full of compassion and deeply realized that we have to meet people where they are, relate to their real human needs on a personal level, and show them that Krishna consciousness has all of the answers. The workshops and retreats we designed were based on the SMILE acronym, very appropriate for the smiling monk. S stood for service and contribution. I, mindset and clarity. I, identity and nature. L, love and relationships. And E, energy and well-being. A team of devotees who had rallied around JD as their leader helped us successfully deliver sessions at EY, Omnom, and the Manor. Every single time, JD was the star of the show. People loved the event, but more than anything else, people loved him. He would have them in fits of laughter. He was a master at work. He owned the room and he had them eating out of his hands. He was the embodiment of love. And so people put down their guard, their fears and doubts. And when he said, okay, let's now try and chant Hare Krishna, they were more than happy to do so. I'd like to finish with a story to give you a flavor of how people new to Krishna consciousness felt about JD and how he really impacted lives. As part of our research for the Smiling Soul project, JD and I would often go to different personal development workshops. We wanted to see what the world was offering and how we could add greater value by adding the bhakti dimension. On one such occasion, we met a guy called Will. Will was posh. Will was smart. He was good looking. And he was clearly also a seeker hungry for knowledge. We met Will in London. He now lives in Bali. When I recently posted on my Facebook page an offering to JD, he left the following comment. And I'd like to share that comment with you all, just to get a sense of what JD has done for so many people. I remember the first time I met him. I was walking down the stairs and I overheard someone say, yes, that was all good, but where does the soul fit into this training? I turned around and I saw JD for the first time. He was smiling as he always does. I was bursting with questions and he had the most beautiful answers to all of them, even my super far out ones, like reptilians, ghosts, life on other planets. I quickly learned that he was a Hare Krishna monk, but an undercover one in civilian clothes. I guess you could say he was a 007 secret agent of the Lord. It was after this conversation with him that I knew that the Hare Krishnas have all of the answers. He quickly connected me to a tribe of amazing humans. And from this encounter and the association that followed, my life has been transformed. I owe my life to JD. Yesterday, after hearing he had left us, I opened a book that he gave me so I could reread a personalized message that he had written for me. It was a book on chanting by Satchidananda Swami, the living name. In his message, JD wrote, 99% of all spiritual advancement comes from chanting the holy names. Please chant with sincerity and absorption. Krishna has your back, smiley face. Since he gave me that book 3 years ago, I've had a roller coaster journey with my chanting. So many ups and downs, trying 16 rounds a day, 4 rounds a day, 8 rounds a day, unable to find consistency with any larger numbers, my lack of self-discipline far outweighing my desire to chant more. So recently I decided to make a smaller commitment, just 2 rounds a day for Krishna. But I was even struggling to stick to this. And then just yesterday, a beautiful Krishna miracle happened, just when I was feeling down and needed a message from God. Some monkeys in Bali stole my japa bag. I looked for it everywhere, thinking to myself, how could Krishna allow my chanting beads to be stolen? There must be a lesson in this. When I finally found it, I noticed that the monkeys had chewed off nearly all of the counting beads, leaving exactly just 2, matching the 2 rounds that I've promised Krishna I would chant. The message was loud and clear from God or from JD or from both of them. Just focus on those rounds, be consistent and stick to your promise. A final message, a final lesson of love and spiritual guidance from JD just hours after his passing. I cried thinking of the message he wrote me in the book. 99% of our advancement comes from chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The message was received loud and clear, JD. Thank you for being such a pure instrument of God. I'm so lucky and grateful that a fallen soul like me was lucky enough to cross your path and receive your love and mercy. Thank you, my brother. I owe you everything. I'm just so happy that you are back with Krishna. Janakinath Prabhu ki.
So now we will like to invite His Holiness Sachinanda Swami just to share a few words just before the family come off. Maharaj has another engagement to attend to.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Mute. Aha. Let me see. Can you hear me? Please, someone.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. One thing which I have not told yesterday was something which I think was the heartbeat of Janakinath Prabhu. He really wanted to reach out to people and preach Krishna consciousness in whatever way, with magic tricks, with out-of-the-box activities, with philosophy, with his example. And that goes a long, long way. This desire to somehow or other share Krishna consciousness. Yes, he was the smiling monk. Yes, he was the amazing magician. Yes, he was the one who asked the essential questions and asked more questions to clarify the essential questions. Yes, he was the endearing friend, but there was a heart, boom, 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 beating, a heart that kept him alive, and that was his willingness to share Krishna consciousness. There is a very interesting statement. After Gandhi had left his body, they found somewhere in his things which belonged to him a letter which was not yet opened. And in this letter he said, if you want, if you honor me, then you must follow me. So I really think that we should keep Janakinath Prabhu's memory alive by following his example, by making him smile on us again and again, by creative and relevant sharing of Krishna consciousness. And I believe that means to keep someone alive. You know, in a spiritual sense, Janakinath is still alive. only when we forget him, only when a veil closes between him and his example and his love, then he will be, then we will lose him out of sight. But if we can somehow imbibe his following, that is very nice. I will just share before I stop speaking something I said yesterday. When it was clear that Janakinath Prabhu journey would most probably bring him to the border of death and beyond, he came to me one day and he said, he asked for help in a serious way. With me, Janakinath would never joke. Somehow he just was serious. Of course, he was joyful, but he would never joke. He would always be very serious. So his question was a sincere one. And I shared with him at that time that whenever I came in difficult situations, which I didn't know how they would turn out, I tried to surrender my life. Means I gave my life, my plans, my creativity, my everything which belongs to me, absolutely in the hands of Krishna. Before I have gone through a few surgical invasive surgery, heavy surgery. Before I went out, before the anesthesia worked, I said always to my Lord, please take this situation into your hand. Please be with me also in this situation. And so he said, how do you do this? And I said, well, there are prayers which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inspired. Mahaprabhu said, asked the question, whose prayers does Krishna actually listen to and answer? And he answers this, those who practice the sixfold path of surrender. So I said, give up all hesitation. Now is the time to surrender. And I don't know if I gave him the book or if I wrote it down so that he could purchase it. I like to think, and I tend to remember, and I think it's a correct memory, that I gave him a book on Sharanagati. And he always read this. He was in this mood. It worked for him. He lost any anxiety, even for Janakinath. Prabhu, it is not easy to think, well, I might die from this, and so on. But this gave him the strength, this surrender, resigning himself, giving himself over. And I wanted to share this and remind you, please surrender to Krishna as much as you can at this moment, but surrender sooner than later, and it will be easy when you face the challenges which life inevitably throws at you. I just come from this preaching. We have this Bhakti retreat here, and I took some time to chant my rounds, the remaining rounds, and I was thinking of him and his example, this resigning ourselves, giving ourselves over into the hands of the Lord is always such a wonderful thing. When we chant, when we pray, when we do service, this is the best place for the soul to be in and to find rest. Thank you very much. And Janakinath Prabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
On behalf of the Shah family, 3 of his cousin sisters, or who many of us know, we can invite him forwards to come speak about JD when he wasn't a devil, and also what it was probably like when before he joined PS. So we're going to hear some source now. Should we get an extra chair?
Hare Krishna, everyone. My name's Ushman. I'm JD's little sister. And yeah, thank you for having us firstly and giving us this opportunity to talk to you guys about him. So thank you for that. There's so much to share about him that I don't even know where to start, especially before he became a monk. I'll share a few things, some funny things. He always had time for us, like everyone else, but he also had time for his family. And it doesn't matter when it would it be 1 in the morning, 10 in the evening? If I'd ever had a question for him, spiritual question, he would always answer it, but he would continue talking till 3 a.m. Before we know it, it's I have to go to work and haven't had any sleep. So that was him. He was really, really good like that. He always had time for family. JD has been glorified for having so many amazing qualities as a devotee, but we saw these qualities earlier in his life before he became a monk. I'll give you an example. For example, when I had my GCSEs and A-levels, and especially the exams and stuff, he would sacrifice going out with his friends and nights out for birthdays just so they can help me and teach me my revision. And yeah, basically, and I was so demanding, and yet he was so patient. He never complained, and he was happy to sacrifice all his nights out just to help me. So that was really nice of him. When it came to his future and career, he was always indecisive. So we always wondered, what would he do? What is he going to be when he grows up? But one minute he wanted to be an artist because he was really good at drawing. One minute he was, I want to be a chef and open up my own restaurant. And then when he said engineering at uni, I was like, are you sure you've got the brains for it? He's like, yeah, what do you think I am, sis? But then, yeah, when he came into KC SOC, he was so determined that when he told me he wanted to do this, you could see on his face that he was serious, and he'd never been so serious about something. And yeah, he was just 100% that this is what he wanted to do. And yeah, I was like, okay, go for it. And then yeah, and that's when he started his path to go into KC and becoming a monk. Just a bit more about him. He always hated shopping. I'm not sure if anyone knows. He used to give me a list of things like, sis, I'm bad. He's got the worst fashion sense ever. So he'd give me a list and I'd buy it all for him. And then that's it, he would wear that. So if you ever saw him looking good or a nice piece of jacket or something, that's probably me. So he always had a poor fashion sense. So as a son, he was very much a mummy's boy, and he was super spoiled when it came to food because he was a really big foodie. So mum would always ask him first before asking any of us what he wanted for dinner. And we would complain, why did you ask him first? And why did you make his favorite, dish? But yeah, he was a mummy's boy, so we had to just go with it. When it came to convincing our dad about anything, whether it was traveling, buying something, living abroad like he wanted to, he would always say, sis, the best way to convince dad is, plant the seed in his head first, then pester him for a couple of days, and then just drop the bombshell and he'll be fine. So that was his way of convincing dad with anything. I remember JD, when he started traveling as a monk in the early years, he used to travel, and once he must have come back from one of his travels, and he said to mom and dad, mom and dad asked him, how was your travel and everything? And they were expecting some kind of souvenir or something, and he didn't bring anything. So he saw how sad they were. So then after that, every travel experiences he had, he used to buy something from the actual, the catalog you get from the airplane? He used to buy something from that. He'd bring it home and he'd tell mom and dad, oh, I spent hours looking for this. I went through so many shops and then I found you this meaningful present. And then he goes to my sister, don't tell me I got it from the airport. So yeah, these are funny things he used to do at home to mom and dad and us. But yeah, as JD grew up as being a great son, a great brother, he was also an amazing uncle and also an amazing brother-in-law, which, you know, he had to slowly build and nurture because it was such a new relationship. The time he spent in the last year and a half during COVID, he taught all his nieces yoga, singing and dancing at home, listening to lectures in the background. And he also got to relive his childhood again as well with the kids. So that was really nice. I remember the week before he left us, he told me, sis, I'm so glad I changed all those nappies on Sianisha. Now that I've done that, I can add that to another list of my skills. Yeah, so yeah, that was funny. He was also willing to connect in different ways and would go out of his way to understand someone else's journey. For example, when I was pregnant, he would ask me so many questions about my journey, my process, my labor, all the terminologies that you get that comes with pregnancy. And he would then use this information to other mums to be and be like, you know, this is what you need to do. My sister said this. They're like, how do you know so much? He would act like he's like done a degree on, you know, pregnancy. So that was hilarious. But you know, there's so much more than this I can talk about, but obviously I don't want to take up too much of your time. But yeah, but he's left so much behind for us that it's going to stay for many, many years. And yeah, we're just so grateful. And we're also lucky to have him as a brother, as parents, everything. And yeah, we're really happy. So yeah, I'm going to move on to okay. Yeah. No, yeah.
Hare Krishna. I'm Kushbu, I'm his cousin. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So being the same age as Janakinath, we lived together, we grew up together. Our relationship really adapted from being sisters and brother and sister. Then we became friends, then partners in crime, and then eventually he became my mentor and guru. As Ishma said, there is just so much that we've done together and been through that some of it is probably not appropriate to talk about right now. But I'll share a few things that that will shed a lot of the things that actually have already been said. So one of the incidents that we remember and laugh about is that whilst playing at a young age, we were very young, like maybe 5-ish or so. I almost made him choke by feeding him some pretend medicine, which actually was a coin in a glass. But thankfully he survived. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't be here today. He was always the teacher pleaser in school. He was a goody two shoes. He always wanted to do the right thing. And, you know, but one of his biggest weakness in school was English. He couldn't write, he couldn't talk. Some of you will agree with the way, with his lingo. And when it came to homework and projects, and obviously it was a lot of copying from me because we were the same class. But funny how the tables have actually turned and what a great speaker he had become. Moving on to sixth form, this is when his lack of timekeeping was really embedded here. He was always late for lessons. And to avoid consequences, so that's usually detention, he would resort to bunking school, but obviously not on his own. He never did things on his own. You know, he would drag me with him. So it's like, Kush, we have 20 minutes to get to school. We're not going to make it, you know, let's just allow it, forget it, you know. That is after me waiting for him for half an hour to get ready and we're still late. University split our paths up, but not for too long. He pushed me to go to Vrindavan to do some voluntary work there. And it was around the same time that he went to Mumbai to do the sabbatical. And then one random day he phones me and says, hey, you know, how you doing? And I said, oh, I'm good. How you doing? He said, oh, I'm good. And then we had this silence for a few seconds. And then he said, by the way, I'm in hospital. So I said, and I was just laughing because I was like, oh, I'm in hospital too. And then we discussed what was wrong with each other. We both had some viral something in India. But then eventually we said, look, we promised not to tell our parents because they didn't have a clue what was going on. Now they do. He would always encourage me to delve deeper into Krishna consciousness because he knew me so well. And we were so alike. The way our brains function was so alike, and he knew that really well. So, you know, when we were both in India, he said, oh, let's have a competition, you know, who can read Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrit first. And we would message each other daily with what page number we're on. I won, but he would definitely have a different story. So I'm glad he's not here to counteract that. I'm so grateful that I was able to meet and associate with His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj. Because of him, it gave me a path to follow, to Krishna. He also gave me Srimad Bhagavatam. He started Sanghas with us, where we did the overview of the Bhagavatam, and encouraged so many people to read, reflect, and apply. And that was his motto. You know, you've got to read, you reflect, and then you apply it to your life. And that love and passion for reading the scriptures was so evident through his association. So even after everyone had left the Sangha, he would still hang out with us, rummage through our junk cupboard and guide me, Dilip, and Radhika, and his ability to connect with everyone, regardless of age, regardless of anything, was incredible. And especially the children, that came to the Sanghas. He was so good at connecting with them through tricks, riddles, jokes, PlayStation. Radhika even taught him how to floss, so he could use that to preach. We're really grateful for his association, his guidance as a guru, as a mentor, as a brother, as a mama. And it's really giving us strength as a family, listening to how he has impacted all these people from all around the world, and just realizing how fortunate we are to have him in our family. So thank you very much.
Hi, Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So one thing we learn in Christian consciousness is the true test is when nobody's watching you, who are you? And I can say for sure that he was exactly the same because we saw him at home. Ashram mentioned he was a foodie. He had really strange taste buds because he would mix up really random things together. And when Chandramauli Maharaj would come for lunch, I would get worried like how he was cooking, but Maharaj seemed to love it, especially the dishes that he would make. So I was just confused. And in his last few weeks, family were visiting him every single day. Even though he was in so much pain, he would make sure there was Mahaprasad for everyone before they even arrived. Prasad was just, food was just his thing. But his real food was association. That's what gave him life. And you could see that because he was so happy to receive the messages from all the devotees. He was a people person by nature, but more deeper than that, he really understood the importance of association. He'd ask in Sanghas, if you could ask Krishna for something, what would it be? And his answer was always association of devotees. Over the last year and a half, being homebound due to COVID, it was really hard for him to not be around devotees physically, and something that he really missed. But we felt very fortunate that we actually got to spend that time with him. We hear about preaching and looking at needs, interests, and concerns of people and relating to them through that. And he did the same for family as well when he was trying to preach to them. He'd meet people where they were at and just be really kind, caring, and compassionate. He encouraged everyone to engage their talents in service. He never wanted the limelight, he just wanted to serve. He was a confidant to many of us in the family, someone we could go to for anything at any time of day. And that's something that we'll really miss. Everyone in our family loves him, everyone. He even loved playing with the babies and toddlers. And once he said to me, when he was observing them, he'd say, the mind is like a baby, chanchal. He'd say he doesn't like public speaking. And before he gave any class or talk, he'd share with me like how he was really stressed out. He had to prepare, like he'd be awake till late. But it's so amazing because when he was giving those talks, he left such a deep impression on the audience. It was his humility that he actually felt like that, but he was truly empowered to preach and share Krishna consciousness. In recent years, through his experience with cancer and seeing the suffering of cancer patients, he became determined to give spirituality to this community. He'd share stories of other patients and how their level of consciousness was so low that even at the time of nearing death, they were hankering after meaningless things. His heart melted out of compassion for them. It also deepened his conviction in this practice. He wasn't puffed up, but genuinely caring and loving to all in the family. For example, like, he's got loads of cousin sisters, so we tie Rakhi on him on Raksha Bandhan, and he'd be like, you don't need a third, it's all about the relationship. So he genuinely cared about us. We hear about the quote, purity is the force. And, he was really, really pure from the beginning. Because in his early years, like straight after he joined, he managed to convince a lot of our wider family to start offering food. We don't come from a Krishna conscious background, but it was amazing. And now a lot of them chant, they read the Gita and Krishna book. He was actually writing a book about his journey with cancer to try and bring more people to Krishna consciousness, but it's really sad that he couldn't complete it. We hear that, when a devotee is liberated, 21 generations are also liberated. Sutta Prabhu shared that with us yesterday. So our family is blessed actually that, we had him. I'll end on a quote that he shared with me, a realization, because he likes to end things with a quote as well. He said, life is like a game of football. It doesn't matter how much possession of the ball you have in a match, it's what you do with it. Leicester had averaged 42% possession in their championship season. I think this is last year when he was homebound. They won the league. So it's not about how long we have, but what we do with that time that we have. Pandav Sena helped mold him into what he became. So thank you for your friendship and association so he could perfect his life at such a young age. We're overwhelmed with the kind messages of everyone expressing their love and support. And we're sorry that we haven't been able to respond to you individually, but we're very, very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful and humorous pastimes of Jigga Janakinath. Really enjoyed that. Now we'll have a short video and then we'll carry on with some offerings.
Hare Krishna. It's an honor to be here to have the opportunity to glorify our dear Janakinath Prabhu. I first met Janakinath in around 2005 at a King's College University event, which Chidi Shakti was speaking at. He was studying there. I was a brahmachari at the time. And Janakinath, he was unique. He had his peculiar but beautiful characteristics. As Chidi Shakti mentioned, he would be bopping around. He had these big headphones as well. But he had this boundless enthusiasm. He had this radiant smile. He had this lovable nature which could disarm anyone. It was like his special weapon. You couldn't be sad around him. After these university events, we would hang out and we would discuss Krishna's teachings for hours. These discussions would spill late into the evening. He would have so many questions. He was very inquisitive, very intelligent. He was like thirsty for knowledge about Krishna. Janakinath, he became so engrossed in Krishna consciousness that he would hold sanghas. He was sharing a flat with devotees. And he started a weekly sangha, and he would invite devotees and people that he was preaching to. And fortunately, he allowed me to stay there once at his place doing these sanghas once a week. And he was such a gracious host. He would look after everyone. He would give up his bed and sleep in the living room on the floor to host the guests. He would cook prasadam for all the devotees as well. And I think his family were mentioning how he would like to experiment when he was cooking. We had plenty of experiences of that nature. Actually, this is not on the script, but once Govind and Gaurang Prabhu, they had come to the UK for the first time. And somehow we had a problem with their prasadam arrangements. And they were from India and they had particular taste buds. Janakinath, he stepped up to cook. And we were like, well, look, we know you like to experiment, but you got to play it safe here. And we didn't have any other alternatives. So we said, Janakinath, go for it. And he cooked. And Gauranga Prabhu, he said, he made some soup. And Gauranga Prabhu said, this is one of the best soups I've had. He said it was a hit. That was his exact words. But because of his sincerity and his devotion, Krishna empowered him to be successful in all services he took up. When he was at university, I remember another occasion, we were doing book distribution. He wasn't present, and our Sankirtan vehicle had broken down. Our tire had punctured. And, we didn't have any breakdown cover. We thought, oh, we don't need insurance. Krishna will take care of us. And we were stuck. We were on the motorway. We didn't know what to do. So I thought, who could I call? So I called Janakinath. And I asked him, do you know how to change a tire? He was at university at this time. And he was like, yes, of course. And, I was skeptical, but again, we didn't have many choices. He was excited and he was enthusiastic to come. So he drove an hour from his university and he got a little lost in the way, but he ended up fixing our tire and he drove back to university. And that was the nature of Janakinath. If there was an opportunity to serve, he would go for it. And he didn't neglect his studies because he got a first, right, for his engineering degree. So he's very smart as well. Eventually, Janakinath was persuaded to join the temple. And on Thursday, some of us, Krishna Avatar was there and Vrindavan Bihari was there. We went to see him. And he mentioned that sometimes he would try and stay away from myself and a devotee called Parama Karuna, who's at the manor, because we would try to make him a brahmachari. And whilst we were trying to get him to join the temple, as I mentioned, Janakinath, he would always do things differently. It was unconventional. So he was attending, I don't know if it was advertised like this, obviously I don't think it was, but it was a ladies only sangha that Chidi Shakti was hosting. And Radhika, she used to be at that sangha, and she was saying that Janakinath, he never made anyone who attended that sangha feel out of place. and his intentions were completely pure. And on reflection and just observing his character, Janakinath, he possessed an innocence that I haven't seen in many people. He possessed almost this like childlike nature, which, you know, was pure, and he also had a natural renunciation. And that's why, as a brahmachari, he was exemplary. In the ashram, when he joined, again, he was unconventional. He would choose to sleep in the locker room instead of more comfortable allocated rooms where the devotees would rest. So in the locker rooms, everyone would get ready and wind down and put their things away. So there was a lot of hustle and bustle. And so we asked him, why would you sleep in the locker room? And he said, because, you know, when I go to preaching events or I'm preaching to people and speaking to people, helping people, I come back late and I want to be at Mangalati. And this showed and demonstrated his determination. Now, granted, he was often still late, but it's the endeavor that counts. Yeah. Also, when on Thursday, when we saw him, Janakinath, he was sharing one-liners, which conveyed some of his memories. He was joking. He said, if you want good prasadam, then you travel with Sachi. And if you want peanut butter and toast, travel with Satapa. Now, obviously, Satapa's very renounced and austere, and we would enjoy, as well as try and do some service. And the reason we had good prasadam was that Janakinath was so enthusiastic about cooking for everyone. And Janakinath, I mean, one of the highlights in my life was traveling and doing book distribution with Janakinath. And, you know, we would all be trying to hit a certain target, distribute a certain amount of books. And Janakinath, he wouldn't always reach that target. And we would sometimes get on his case. But the reason why Janakinath didn't distribute as many books as others was because he had such compassion for the people he was meeting. He would spend substantial time with everyone he met as he was preaching. And that was the nature of Janakinath. He would always have time for everyone. And he would, on occasions, he would also invite them back to where we were staying, and he would cook prasadam for them, and he would charm them, and he showed his loving nature to them. And, you know, Srila Prabhupada, he signs his letters off and he says, "Your ever well-wisher." And Janakinath, in my mind, he truly tried to imbibe this mood. He truly wanted to help everyone. He cared for everyone. I've never heard Janakinath criticize anyone. I've never heard him say a bad thing about anyone. And that was his nature. He would always see the good. Many devotees who stayed at the manor were sent to Chowpatty for further training. And the devotees in Bombay, they explained that, you know, you sent many good candidates, but they were encouraging us to vet the devotees before we send them. And so Janakinath wanted to spend some time in India, and we weren't sure. But he ended up going, and Gauranga Prabhu, he has very high standards. And he said he's one of the best devotees that you've ever sent from the UK to Chowpatty. He said, send more like Janakinath. And if you ever go to Chowpatty or the eco village, and you meet the devotees that interact with him, they have nothing but good to say. There's so much I admire about Janakinath. His devotion to his guru was exceptional. He would do anything for Chandramani Swami. He understood his spiritual master, what he wanted, and eventually his inner heart's desires were fulfilled when he got the opportunity to personally serve Chandramani Swami. My last encounter with him was something I'll always remember. He was in a lot of pain, he was emaciated, but he was ecstatic, he was humorous, and he was jokingly sharing memories. What came to mind seeing him in this way was Srila Prabhupada's teaching. The greatness of a person is estimated by his ability to tolerate difficult situations. And I can say hand on heart, Janakinath truly personified this. Janakinath Prabhu Ki Jai. We pray he remembers us because he's definitely in a better place than us. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, such a show. Just a memory I'll share. I think it was 2007 or 8. There was 5 of us boys that were going through Krishna consciousness together in Pandava Center. We stayed in Sudapa's motor van, one of his terrible motor vans that never worked. So it was on the lawn somewhere because no one knew what to do with it. And there was 5 or 6, suppose they're called beds, but something horizontal. So us 5, me, Gancham Priya, Janakinath, and 2 others, we stayed there and we were all talking about, they were talking about Brahmacharya and the book, I forgot what it's called, but the Brahmacharya book, obviously I didn't read it. And they were all talking like, yeah, you know, the Brahmachari and people like Sachi and Paramakuruna were really working them. And then we went around and we were saying, and I started first and said, I'll be a Grihastha, I just like kids too much. And then the other 3 said, I'll be a Brahmachari. And then Janakinath was the last person when we were talking. And then before he said, I'll be a Brahmachari, we all looked at him and said, he ain't getting married. He was just too sweet, you know, he never had any intention, he wasn't cut for that. He was just cut for loving people, and he made a good decision. And it's nice to hear Sajid Kishore's memories of his journey through Brahmachari. Now we'll have Naveen Krishna Prabhu, and then we'll try the video. So we're due to finish by about just after 9. We may have to cut out part of the end of the program in order to keep time with the kitchen team. If the following speakers can just try and pick out the main points. I apologize. I'm sure everybody wants to share a lot, just so we can stick to time. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna. I was just, when I came in, I was speaking to Rob, and Rob said, you couldn't believe it, this monk. It's like, he's always smiling, and he's like, Prabhu Shuti Dharma. And I was thinking, well, you know, like that's how we catch him, and that's how the world sees him. He's like, he's always smiling, and one accolade to be compared to Shuti Dharma Prabhu. So I was, when I was listening to Shuti talk, and she was mentioning that he was, you know, it was obvious from the beginning that he wasn't frivolous. To me, it wasn't obvious. Like, it says something more about me than it does about him. But, you know, he's popping around and like these headphones, like everyone's been talking about. And then this only girl Sangha. I mean, like that's a, you know, like he was at uni, like I was just speaking to the boys, like 2003, right? 2003 to 6, something like that. So I was a bit outside of PS because I stepped away in 2001. So I was only seeing him from a distance. And I was thinking, this guy's definitely frivolous, you know, like what's he up to? But I wasn't so involved, so anyway. So for me, actually, it took a while to get to know Janakinath Prabhu. And it was probably actually when he started coming to my Sangha. So he called me up and he said, can I join your Sanghas? And he was in the ashram at the time. I said, anyway, at least you'll be joining a boy Sangha, so let him come. but in all seriousness, like, you know, he was so, it was amazing. I remember like when we used to see him like walk through the door, the boys were like happy, you know, like we just look forward to him being there because he was, yeah, he just had this energy about him, which everyone's been speaking about. And then after the Sangha, he'd often stay back and we'd speak for some time, for hours. And there'd be 2 main things that he'd want to talk about. So one would be about just the Bhagavatam or the CC, whatever you're reading, and others have spoken about. He had these really penetrating questions, actually, very, very deep questions, not from the perspective of, obviously there's the theoretical knowledge, you want to understand the theoretical knowledge, then there's the application, but his was one step a little bit further, which was that the application specifically in my life and in a way which was, you know, very real for him, that he wasn't
just kind of wasting time. So there was that thing that, and it struck me actually that this person's got some, he's absorbed in this. He's not just reading it because he's coming to a Sangha. And when he'd miss a Sangha, like these boys miss a Sangha every day, you know, like, I mean, every whatever, right? So you never hear from him. But like Janakinath, he misses a Sangha, like, I'm getting messages and emails, I'm so sorry, I get voice notes. I was like, you're staying in the ashram, you don't need to come to my Sangha. But he was just so keen to absorb himself. And the other thing that he was really enthusiastic to talk about, which is was that he wanted to discuss preaching. So he'd be discussing whether it was this strategy or that strategy, or how he could structure it this way or that way, or how he could make the most impact, and how he could work with different projects going on, because he knew I was involved in a few different things. So he had this, you know, like there's this one aspect which everybody's talking about in terms of the glue, and that's 100% there. And that also manifests in how he saw preaching. Sometimes we get into this thing where everyone's doing their own thing and everyone's trying to, whatever they're doing is kind of like it's like an isolated thing. And he had a very different vision. He had a completely different vision in how he was thinking about preaching and taking that forward. It was just, yeah, it was really profound to see. So I mean, he's been involved with the Avanti stuff. I remember he's not just here. Raj, I think you sent a picture today, like the very first time when we started moving across the jammings to Avanti, he gave that talk. When these guys, Vishnu was talking about, when they went to Radhadesh, and all these kids who'd not really been with devotees before, you know, they saw Janakinath and met him and spoke to him, and just, you know, they're all missing him because they built that connection over that one trip. And then Satchikishore we just referred to. I just want to speak a little bit more about it. You know, I was speaking about this whole girls only Sangha thing, but I realize now, I realized about, maybe it must have been about 2 years ago actually, that I couldn't have been like more wrong about something, because he was actually, it struck me, it was about 2 years, there was a particular incident that happened that I was observing, and it struck me that this is like actually one of the most celibate people I know. And what I mean by that is that, you know, we see in very exalted personalities, you see there's two types of celibacy. Like one type of celibacy is, I can't look at a woman, and I can't, like I have to be blinkered, and then I can maintain my celibacy. Another type of celibacy is that they actually can engage meaningfully in a Krishna conscious way with the opposite gender and not be affected by that. And that's because the difference between lust and love is very pronounced. And this aspect was, yeah, it struck me in this incident when I was observing him, that this person is actually very celibate at a very profound level, that he doesn't see that as a kind of a barrier for being sensitive to somebody. So that was really important. And about 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember when it was, Sandipan arranged with Sutta Prabhu for Rasbihari Yashoda and myself to go and see him. And he was obviously emaciated, and you could tell he was in a very difficult position. Here he's still smiling and still Janakinath, but he struggled. And what amazed me from that was, like, the four of us, we never sing, but he made each of us sing on that day. And I walked out there, I think, how did he do that? Like, you know, like, we're the last people on the planet to lead a kirtan. But like, he went through each one, and he's like, you have to sing and you can't say no. And that was a kind of one of those things with Janakinath Prabhu, is that he just, you know, he's such an affectionate person, you couldn't say no to him. I just wanted to end on this one point, that slightly serious point, that these last 18 months, for many of us, have been traumatic. We've lost so many close devotees, some of our most incredible devotees here in this country and also around the world. And this one, you know, had a particular sting to it because it goes against the natural order of things. And I think Sandipan said it, that, you know, he was one of us and Krishna took him. And he came through Pandasena. He, you know, he just, and he, and for us, I think what Satyananda Maharaj is saying is very profound, that that's the example that we have, that through our own devotees, association, our community, we see these incredible people come to Krishna consciousness, and within a matter of years, they attain a spiritual level, which is, I mean, it's incredible. And I just wanted to reiterate what Maharaj was saying, that what we have to take away from this to keep Janakinath Prabhu close is that these are not theoretical things for us. They're real, and we have to aspire for the same and to follow in those wonderful footsteps. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Janakinath Prabhu.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. And now we'll try the video.
Hey, Hare Krishna dear devotees, Gauranga, it's Janakinath. I'm outside my hospital. And guess what day it is? It's the day I get released. Yay! Sun is great, fresh air, beautiful. I missed it. Last 15 days was hell. This has been the most toughest experience of my entire life. And my body's gone through a lot of stress. It's a lot of week and I need to recoup, but this is a quick message just to say thank you so much and express my gratitude to all you wonderful devotees for showering your blessings, your prayers, and everything else you've been doing, extra rounds and everything. And I'm telling you, this is the only thing that kept me going. Sorry, pain's coming back. But the point I wanted to make was that I know the only thing that kept me going in this really difficult situation was knowing that the devotees are praying for me and the blessings are upon me, and that really kept me going, and I'm so grateful. And this whole experience was worth it for that, and I really feel that this is my true wealth. So thank you so much for the bottom of my heart. If I have to go through the whole experience again to collect all these blessings, I would do it, but just not yet, not yet. Also pray to Krishna that I somehow or the other reciprocate and serve you all to the best of my ability. Thank you so much. I will be staying in touch with you guys very soon, and I hope and pray to be in your association soon as well. Thank you, Gauranga.
The Janakinath Prabhu refers to his wealth as the association of devotees. And he spent 5 and 7 years with the following 2 boys, living with them, going through his journeys and his latter years. So we'd like to invite his brothers from the ashram, Shesha and Janakinath.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna to the family, all the devotees here. And yeah, somehow we were all connected, and the 3 of us were like brothers in the ashram, even though so many times I would say to Janakinath, you're like the sister I never had, you know? But yeah, we had like a very amazing relationship. And for like a couple of years ago, for a month, we were battling with the authorities that we wanted to have a room together. And they were just saying like, no, we're never going to let this happen, you know? And we had this kind of relationship that we were always in trouble on ourselves, and we would always scheme and plan how to get each other out of trouble. But somehow in that process, we would get into even more trouble. So it was really, really adventurous with him at all points. And one thing that was actually quite daunting with him was actually speaking after him at a program. And, you know, we would be on the car journey towards a program, and he would say to me, you know, what points are you going to say? So I'd say a couple of my points. He would share a few points he was going to say. And then I'd say, you know, probably everyone's buzzing to see you. You please speak first. And then he'll say, no, you speak. I've heard your points, and I'll give the real substance before Prashad, you know? So anyway, we're on the way to a program. Between parking the car and going into the house, he'll then whisper in my ear and say, actually, I'll go first. So then I was like, okay, fine. Then, you know, he would give the most incredible talk. He would make it so interactive and buzzing. He would do, you know, magic tricks, as we all know. And he would also say all the points that I was going to say in a way better way than what I was planning to do. And I would always just like whisper in his ears. I would say like, what do I do now, you know? And he would just have this thought, some unique, amazing, dynamic thought would come from him, and we'll just go down that direction. And yeah, it was amazing to see him in action, preaching, and how much of a desire he had to preach. And he could connect to anyone and everyone. He was doing these cancer retreats for like 60, 70-year-olds. And after a day, he would become their best friend, you know? Then he was connecting to all of us. And when we were going to Cambridge, there was all like the children of all the families were there, and they used to call him Magic Prabhu, you know. And so after any of the sessions we would do, they would run up to him and say, you know, Magic Prabhu, please, you know, do a trick for us. And he had this like little fan club around him. And yeah, a few months ago, I think about 5 or 6 months ago, he texted me and he said, you know, what are you doing preaching wise right now? What are you planning? And I said to him, you know, there's just some sessions I'm doing. I'm just thinking over some interactive stuff. So then he FaceTimed me and he said, you know, what are the interactive things you're thinking of? So we went through some stuff. And then I said to him, what would you recommend? What would you do? And he said, forget all these interactive stuff. Just give them Krishna, give them straight Krishna. Everyone wants Krishna. Just give it direct. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's nice. But I think they need a few icebreakers. And he was at home, and in his room, I saw there was like some playing cards next to him. There was also his bead bag and Tulsi, don't worry. there were some playing cards that were there, and I said, why don't you just teach me a magic trick? Maybe I can use that. I wasn't going to use it, but I just wanted to see him do something. And he just said to me, no, forget magic tricks as well. He said the real magic is actually helping distract people from the ignorance that they're so heavily covered by. And I was just blown away. And then he said, and at that point, when you distract them, you give them some really fun, dynamic Krishna consciousness, and they'll never have tasted or felt a buzz like that before. So I was really blown away. And then I said to him, so are you going to teach me a magic trick or not? But he didn't teach me it. But I think this sums Janakinath Prabhu up. He helped so many people, all of us with problems, made us even laugh at some of the problems that we thought we had. And he brought such a buzz and such a vibrant preaching element to our lives that was so exciting. So thank you so much, Janakinath Prabhu. Thank you so much to his parents for so much love, his family for so much love as well. And the flame of preaching he's given us, I think, will always continue in our hearts. Janakinath Prabhu ki.
Probably love. Janakinath was also, we used to say he was the mother of the ashram. So he would make soup for us when we were sick, make tea. The real reason me and Shesha always wanted a bedroom with him was just because he could mother us, because we were in the ashram without our mums. But Hare Krishna. But there's so much to say for Janakinath Prabhu. I'm sad not to have him here, but when you look at Janakinath's face, you cannot help but not be sad. You can only be happy. You can only smile. You can only be joyous, because when Janakinath's around anyone, he has a particular effect. I always said that he's a very easy man to love. He wins people's hearts effortlessly. And I used to think, how is he able to do this? Because, when Janakinath was giving a talk, he didn't necessarily have the slickest PowerPoint slides or the best preaching strategy or the best English. But what he had was the best internal strategy. He had no ego. He never envied anyone. He was never resentful to anyone. I was with him at many, many different situations and programs where people would be quite offensive to him and be quite rude to him. And I was kind of there thinking, I want to knock this person out. But he was like, no, no, no. And devotees as well, ironically. But you know what? Janakinath's reaction to it all was actually quite extraordinary, because I could see in his mind he was ready to respond. And what he was responding with was a way in which he could glorify that devotee, a good thing he could say about the devotee, a way in which he could support that devotee to make their next move in their Krishna consciousness. He was all about others and not about himself, genuinely, effortlessly. He didn't have to try. And when you see that interaction take place, quite a magical thing happens. So we spent a lot of time on book distribution together. And if you've ever seen Janakinath on book distribution, where you're meeting lots of new people constantly, as soon as they enter his bubble, it's game over. It's game over, because they just fall in love with him and they're electrified by him, they're mesmerized by him. I remember one time, we were in Liverpool, so it was just me and him on a marathon in Liverpool, and it was a great day, almost like Christmas Eve. And at the same time on the street, there were some charity workers, also known as chuggers. And they were having a tough day, really hard. But Janakinath was just effortless, like a train. Mercy was flowing. And what we used to do is, in the van, just before we entered the street, we used to read one of Sri Ram Maharaj's meditations that he would send out to his disciples and well-wishers. And the meditation we read that day, and one that illustrates Janakinath Prabhu for me, it was entitled, Don't Get in the Way. And Sri Ram Maharaj talked about the fact that our own motivations, our own ego and enviousness gets in the way of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy from flowing within us being used as a pure instrument to then distribute Krishna consciousness. And I thought Janakinath didn't have anything in the way. This is why he would just touch people. They would become so enlightened. Anyway, so this day he was just having a great day, and I was just stopping. I had to stop for a second and just watch him. I was like, this is amazing just to watch him. And he ran out of books, so we came back to the book box, and this lady came who was the street child, and she had been watching JD, and she was Liverpudlian. So she comes up to JD and she just goes, she doesn't know who he is, just, in his long black coat, his burgundy hat. And she goes, mate, you're sick. She goes, you're sick, man. You should be doing my job. And JD's like, no, we don't get paid for this. She goes, we don't get paid. And she was just gobsmacked by the power JD had over all these individuals. And we had many, many instances like that, and many funny moments on book distribution, and just seeing JD was in his element when he was preaching, because he loved to share Krishna consciousness. And we always used to say on the street, we used to discuss, and we used to say, after a long day, we'd come back and we'd say, JD, how would we like to die? And JD said, on the battlefield. On the battlefield, I want to go, whilst giving Krishna. And I think it's evident the past 4 years in JD's cancer journey at the hospital, he was giving Krishna. I remember the first operation he had, I was really worried. And, Sutta Prabhu went to go and see him. So in the morning in Mangalarti, I went into the DT room to ask Sutta Prabhu, how's JD? Like, how was his operation? And then Sutta Prabhu was laughing. I was like, what are you laughing about? He goes, you won't believe it. When we went there, he went there with Srinivas Prabhu. And he went there, and then because JD was coming off the anesthetic, all the nurses and doctors that would come into the room when Sutapa and Srinivas Prabhu were there, he would introduce them and say, excuse me, nurse, this is Sutapa, he's my mentor and guide. This is Srinivas, he helps me with the holy name. And he would just, it's like, this guy just had an operation, like some of his organs, and he would just be like introducing like all these things. Are so hilarious. And I'll share one more memory that really strikes me. I think about, I can't remember when, I think maybe 5 years ago, me and him went to India for a month just to recoup. So we stayed in Govardhan Ashram. It was like a beautiful trip. And every morning we would walk to Radhakund. And when you go up from Radhakund, there's some of the Vrajbasi's houses, and there's a little stool, and we used to sit there and just study all day. And in the evening, we would either walk back, but if it was too dark, we'd take a rickshaw. So one of the days, we were there in Vrindavan, and we took a rickshaw back, but no rickshaws were available. So we were like, what should we do? So a man, a Vrajbasi on his motorbike came, and he had like sugar canes on the left attached, right? And a motorbike came, and we were like, we need to go somewhere. And he was like, come, I'll take you. We said, okay, great. But it's a motorbike and there's 3 of us. And he's like, no, 3 of us is fine. So Janakinath got on, I got on the back of Janakinath, and we're going. And this is Vrajbasi, and we're going down Prokramag. And then suddenly Janakinath starts asking the driver some really basic Krishna conscious questions. So he says to him, oh, so he's saying in Hindi, he's saying, oh, so who's Krishna's consort? And I'm like, Janaki, man, like, this is a Vrajbasi. You're a brahmachari. You know the answers to this. Why are you asking him this? I didn't say that at the time. I was just looking at him. What are you asking that for? Then the Vrajbasi just looks back, 2 saffron-clad brahmacharis from the West. And he's like, what do you mean? You should know that. Like, what are they teaching you? And he's like, Radharani. He's like, okay. And then you ask him another question. So could you tell me, like, what did they used to do in Vrindavan? And could you tell me some pastimes or some other basic questions which you would know? And then the whole trip went like this, and the guy was looking a bit, a bit like, why don't you know this? But anyway, he complied, and he said a few things. And I watched Janakinath as he replied, and he was just looking at the Vrajbasi's face, just listening attentively, being really appreciative of the answer. And then he would ask another question while I'm just flustered, like, what's going on? So anyway, we got off the bike and we were walking back to the ashram. And I asked Janakinath, why did you ask the Vrajbasi these simple questions? Why did you ask that? You know this. And he goes, I only wanted to hear the glories of Radharani from the mouth of a Vrajbasi. That's why I asked him the questions. Many of us might be thinking, I know this already, I don't need to ask, but Janakinath did have no ego, no enviousness, never thought he was greater than anyone, and was always ready to receive Krishna Katha from anyone and everyone. And I think that's a great quality Janakinath had. And just to finish on one other point is, what I think Shesha can vouch for this as well. One thing Janakinath maybe wasn't So grade that was finishing a project. So he would start up lots of projects, then he would it'll be like a month, and he'll recruit Shaysha, recruit me, we're on the project with him. And it's like, oh great, we're gonna get to serve with JD for like a year. 1 month in, and he'll just bring it on us. Oh yeah, by the way, tomorrow I'm going traveling with Chandramuli Maharaj. So there's all these projects he used to start but never finish. But I think it's safe to say that one project he did successfully complete was the project of his own Krishna consciousness. A project worth finishing and a project well done. I think it's safe to say that. So I'd stop there, and just on one last thing, I was also thinking, how do we carry on JD's legacy? Is it through a project? Is it through something else? But actually, it's just to become saintly ourselves, because Janakinath was a saint. He was very pure in heart, and that's why he was loved by so many. So if we are to take anything from his life, was the saintliness of Janakinath, and how we can look at our faults and think about what would Janakinath do in this particular situation, because he had a very unique way of dealing with things. So I'll stop there. Thank you all. His Grace, Janakinath Prabhu Ki.
Thank you very much, boys, for your memories of Janakinath Prabhu in the ashram, the adventures you shared with him. Now we'll invite Rajadan Prabhu, who particularly spent a lot of time with him in the last months, and will continue to do so in his service to Janakinath Prabhu. So with him.
Panchakalpatarupascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. First of all, I'd like to share my deepest condolences to the parents of Janakinath Prabhu and to the rest of his family. I'd also like to share my deepest condolences to His Holiness Chandramuli Maharaj. I've never seen the love between a guru and disciple as powerful as Janakinath and His Holiness Chandramuli Maharaj. I have vivid memories as a teenager of Janakinath sprinting up and down Sundarananda Prabhu's staircases as Maharaj would shout, "Janaki!" to grab his attention. So I just wanted to share my condolences, but those memories of his relationship with Maharaj will always be imprinted in my mind. My first memory of Janakinath was in the Pandavasena trip in 2007 to Innisfree. The boys went to Ireland, to the boot camp, and the girls went to Radesh for the rainbow retreat. I was 13 years old, and although I was told by many senior devotees that the djembe is ruining their kirtan, Janakinath, bright-faced in white, gave me a nod as to keep playing the instrument that I only knew how. My second memory was a trip after. It was to Italy, to Villa Vrindavan. Unfortunately, myself, Mihir, Yajan, Akshay, Sheshadas, and yes, Radhika Ranjan, we had to walk the gauntlet, and we were being banished from Villa Vrindavan for unthinkable deeds. My sister was furious, and we were called in to speak to His Holiness Chandramuli Maharaj, who called us the swimming team and laughed. I remember sitting with JD, sobbing. He had absolutely no ego, and there was absolutely no judgment from him. So this is someone about 10 years older than me. I was only 14 years old, but we only got empathy and love from him. There are many more stories I want to share with my time with him, traveling to Southampton on book distribution with him and Gurudas, and him cooking khichdi for 3 people in a pot that's used for Janmashtami. Other stories being part of Rock UK, and there's so many more, but I wanted to share, as Krishna Kirtan Prabhu said, what happened in the last year. So there are some fantastic books about the journey of those suffering from cancer. When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi tells the story of a neurosurgeon who had brain cancer. The last lecture by Randy Porsche tells the story of a professor who had pancreatic cancer. And The Bright Hour, a memoir of living and dying by Nina Riggs, tells the story of a writer who had breast cancer. There are some truly remarkable people who have shared their profound realizations. And I thought to myself, why don't we tell the remarkable story of a monk who had colon cancer? We can answer questions like, how is it that a monk who dedicates their life to God can still get cancer? It's such a paradox. How does one understand and accept suffering? What is a mindset and meditation of one going through such illness? What are the things someone suffering from cancer wants to hear or spend their time doing? How does one practice bhakti yoga and grieve and understand loss? And of course, why do good things or why do bad things happen to good people? Ancient teachings, modern times. The thing about people with sincere humility is that they always want to serve without making themselves the center of attention. They want to give endlessly, but try to retreat at the first signs of adoration. For people that are not on this platform, this is extremely annoying. It really took some convincing for JD to agree to sit down and start sharing his realizations and story. Luckily, the one person who he listens to, Sutapa, was also thinking the same thing. Over the last year, I had the great fortune to serve Janakinath by helping him reflect on his life in preparation to share his story. He would say, Raja, this is like therapy for me. This is like free therapy. And I would repeat the same thing back to him. We spent countless hours together on Zoom and also at the Costa of the Hammersmith Hospital and the Charing Cross hospitals discussing his life. He would order a panini and a hot chocolate, and I would do the same. He, of course, cared about his health, but not just to get better, but only to serve. At some points, I felt that he would just go for a blood test so that he could and we could just sit in Hammersmith Hospital together. So he would just make something up and say, oh, they cancelled it. So we could just sit together. I thought I would share some memories that he's actually written and the principles that we can all learn from him. Many people don't know this, but the first 6 years, well, his parents and family do, but the first 6 years, Janakinath grew up in India. And he was actually trying to structure his book around the love that his mother had given him. And he was trying to structure it in such a way that the endless love that his mother had given him, he would spend his whole life searching for how to receive that love back and how to give that love out to people. Janakinath writes, growing up, I was very lovingly and affectionately nurtured by my mother. She was very protective of me, but also gave me so much unconditional love that I constantly yearn for it and it becomes my need. I was a very happy child and satisfied. I was constantly under the shelter of my mother. I was content. I would get constant appreciation and acknowledgement from her. This naturally made me a very soft person as a result. About his father, my father would run a family pharmacy. My father was actually trying to discipline me and toughen me up, and hence his external show of strength. He knew the discipline would not certainly come from my mother. I admired my father's generosity. He was very charitable. If you asked for money, time, advice, etc., he would happily give it. For his sister, he writes, I had a close relationship with my sister. We fought a lot, but we still had good companionship, and we would always seek each other's advice in life. He writes about his grandmother on his mother's side. She also showed me a lot of love and affection. She would always tell me stories from the Mahabharata and Ramayana. She introduced me to the Bhagavad Gita at a very young age. I still didn't know its glories. At university, he writes about Sutapa. Sutapa was very friendly, down to earth, and very approachable. It seemed he was genuinely concerned for my well-being. He told me to join the KC SOC where he said we can have regular discussion about life and the universe. He then talks about attending a talk by a consultant psychiatrist. She made spirituality very appealing and beneficial. I regularly attended this due to fascinating wisdom and also because of free food. I invested my student loan on a bad business and it failed, import-export. So I was running just on cash, so any free food was welcome. Fast forwarding to the ashram days, February 2013. My trip to India got cancelled with Guru Maharaj. I had to sacrifice my trip for another devotee. I was really upset. And the icing on the cake, my best friend Gansham Priya announces he's leaving the ashram. Furthermore, I had to do Gujarati house programs with Vinay and Praveen at my family's yard and became the ashram cleaning coordinator. Fast forwarding to May 2019, in his time where he was diagnosed with cancer. The only thing I look forward to in the chemo day unit was seeing the staff and other patients. They were very friendly and encouraging. I asked the nurses what makes them so committed to doing a very difficult service day and night. They told me that their self-worth and commitment to the job comes from the fact that they can become an instrument in having a positive impact in other people's lives. Even from patients, you can learn a lot. I would go around the ward and speak to patients and their journey and what helped them cope in their situation. I got many useful tips from them in dealing with my condition. I found that many people said having the right mindset is key in dealing with these situations, and having faith in God played a big part for them. They got a lot of empowerment from it. Janakinath would then write a lesson from this. He would say, the power of good relationship can make a bad situation bearable. From developing relationships with doctors and nurses, etc., seeing everyone as a teacher in your life. Even the cleaner can give wisdom, he writes. She looked so happy and content. She said, Paula, a Romanian cleaner, to him, life will throw a lot at you. It's coming to you. Don't push it. You will lose. It's a waste of energy. Accept it, embrace it, and learn and grow from it. When you do this, you will experience a different kind of happiness. Who gets this conversation from a cleaner in the hospital? If anyone's been to a hospital or stayed at a hospital, these are not normal conversations that are brought out in people, but Janakinath could extract it and extract wisdom from anyone. The start of November 2018, finally. The next scan result has confirmed that the cancer has spread to the lungs, but the chemo is working because the size of the small tumor has shrunk. That is the duality of life. There is always a flip side to life. The chemo is working, but the cancer has spread to the lungs. He writes in his lessons, in life with anything good, there is always something bad connected to it. We just need to cultivate the quality of equanimity in all situations in life. I taught him the word equanimity. This will ensure we live a life with sanity. I also had another profound realization that I don't actually believe in death. First rule of physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes shape. That same applies to life. Winky face that Janakinath always does in his texts. There is no such thing as death. Trying to understand and accept death at this point, there's no point trying to understand and accept death at this point. I did not think that my time was coming soon. Death is everything ending, YOLO, etc. But because of Krishna consciousness, I was looking at death deeply. Death is not the end. It's a journey. Death is like a car dealership. Because your vehicle is bust, it's your opportunity to get a new vehicle to continue your journey. That thought makes it exciting, because it's exciting that we go fully electric. It's like getting a new Tesla. But there's so much more to share about Janakinath Prabhu and the amazing lessons that he has within him, and he would speak so deeply and fondly of his family. I feel like you're celebrities, I know you, but I just want to share my deepest condolences and condolences to the rest of the devotees who lost him. And I just want to end with one thing, that it's so easy, this, as Naveen Krishna Prabhu said, these last 18 months have been torture, but it's so easy to quote from the Bhagavatam or quote from the Bhagavad Gita. But when you lose someone that's close to you, then you really start questioning, like, if he's with Krishna, like, why would Krishna do this? And does Krishna exist? And then you really start understanding the grief process and understanding the words a bit more deeply, or questioning everything you seem to know. So I think there's a great scope of like encouraging this discussion, and speaking about it through the life of Janakinath Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Rajananda. That brings us to the close of the offerings. We'll just share a few words. So, dear uncle, auntie, thank you so much for coming, and the whole Shah family. Thank you for taking the time. We know it's very difficult in emotional times at the moment, but thank you for coming and being with us. It wouldn't have been the program without you coming. So can we give a big round of applause? You could conceive today and hear that Janakinath Prabhu was our brother, for some sister, for some even their mother. So we know that we won't be Janakinath. We are different people. But because he's our brother, sister, and mother, please consider us your children. And if there's anything we can do to help you in the immediate and the long term, please let us know how we can serve you. And we hope that we can continue Janakinath's legacy and mood and example for the many, many more years to come. So whenever you come to the temple and see us, you'll remember Janakinath. Thank you for coming. And for all of the speakers, thank you so much. We keeping time, keeping all your messages heartfelt. We apologize for those that couldn't speak today. There'll be more opportunities to share in the coming days. We thank Krishna Avanti School, Shampopal and Rob for organizing everything and allowing us to use their lovely facility. And we thank all of you for turning up. Obviously, this is the first day of the lockdown easing. And what a fitting program to have as we become free, and hopefully we can become free like our Janakinath Prabhu. The last time I met JD was just 5-6 days ago, and a group of us went, we led Kirtan, and then everybody left and I was there, and I just wanted to offer my respects to him. And he said, Krishna Kirtan, why did you not lead a Kirtan? And even though he's in so much pain, he just wants to do Kirtan. And he said to me something which gives a lot of heaviness to me in my life now. He gave me 2 instructions, one of them I'll share. He said to me, get absorbed. I can do it, you can do it. This is not a joke anymore. And he was seeing something. He did all the magic tricks, and now Krishna's done his magic on him, and he's in Krishna's magic land. And now all of us have this burden and responsibility that we also have to make it. We could make excuses for the older devotees. We could say they've been around for 50 years, they're Prabhupada disciples, but JD is one of ours. So he made it, we can make it. And with his blessings, we will do so. And one of the ways of getting blessings is associating with devotees, but he also liked to rave. I remember seeing him in the early days. We went clubbing once. That was quite funny. He still does that thing. So let's all kindly come forward. If a couple of boys could just move the sofa to the side. We'll have Kirtan while we set up Prasadam. Once the Prasadam is collected, you can take a seat at the back there, or if you're feeling very hot, please go outside. It's nice and cool outside. You can have your prasadam there. So without further ado, if you'd like to please stand. And if you'd like to congregate here in the temple room, our Radhika Ranjan Prabhu will lead a kirtan for 10 minutes. Hare Krishna.
Shivasati Gaura Bhaktarinda ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyamukund Radhakund Giri Govardhana ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Ganga Mai ki Jai. Jamuna Mai ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Happy Devi ki Jai. Samveta Bhaktarinda ki Jai. Janakinath Sankirtan ki Jai. Shri Bhattacharya ki Jai. Samveta Bhaktarinda ki Jai. All verses everywhere. All verses everywhere. All verses everywhere. All glories, Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga, all glories to His Grace Janakinath Prabhu ki Jai. Janakinath Prabhu ki Jai. Janakinath Prabhu ki Jai.
About all of you, but even just paying the basics with each other, now we're like prasadam together, we dance together, we sing together. What a gift Janakinath Prabhu has given us. And the first thing we can do it all together, it's with his smile in our focus. So a couple of last announcements. Tomorrow is the funeral, so we meet at the manor at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the ceremonies will go on until midday-ish. And then 1 o'clock is the funeral. It's restricted to family members or those that are already invited, so please don't turn up. You could sign on online, and I'm sure you've all got the link, otherwise it will be posted out again over the next few hours. And then there'll be subsequent PS events coming up where we'll be able to hear more about Janakinath, more people here to speak. We thank you very much for coming tonight. Please don't let this be a usual day. Let this be an extraordinary day where the memories and the legacy of Janakinath will get cemented deep in our hearts and mind. And let us smile together. Yeah, we're back out, it's open. Let us smile and make Krishna consciousness. Be happy in Krishna consciousness and give the happiness of Krishna consciousness to others. And then he will smile on us from up there. Hare Krishna. So if you make your way over there, if anyone's inspired, there's going to be some cleaning up to do at the end. Otherwise, go home safely and see you very soon. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki.
Good job, Ranika. Sorry? Good job.
Roger,